Well, we're just under 90 minutes away from a news conference with President Trump and senior advisor Elon Musk. It's Musk's last day as a special government employee, and President Trump says he's done a terrific job in slimming down our very bloated government. We'll bring that to you live as soon as we have it. Hello, everyone. This is Outnumbered. I'm Emily Compagno, and also joining us today, Molly Line, Fox News correspondent, Kennedy, host of the Kennedy Saves the World podcast, Riley Gaines, Outkick contributor and host of Gaines for Girls on Outkick, and Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful, chairman of O'Leary Ventures. Now, we begin with a temporary legal victory for the Trump administration after two lower courts struck down the president's authority to impose sweeping global tariffs. An appeals court said Trump's tariff agenda could continue while the administration tries to fight those decisions. Now, in the meantime, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says the White House is exploring other ways to carry out the president's agenda. Watch.
The president's trade policy will continue. We will comply with the court orders, but yes, the president has other legal authorities where he can implement tariffs.
So has the administration then reached the point where you are actually asking your economic advisors to start reviewing other avenues to implement the president's trade policy, or do you want to just see this legal process take place for now?
We can walk and chew gum at the same time. We are doing both. The president has other legal authorities he can use to implement tariffs, and the administration is willing to use those.
And the president reacting to the ruling against his tariff agenda on Truth Social, saying this, quote, "Where do these initial three judges come from? How is it possible for them to have potentially done such damage to the United States of America? Is it purely a hatred of Trump? What other reason could it be?" He continued, "The ruling by the U.S. Court of International Trade is so wrong and so political. Hopefully, the Supreme Court will reverse this horrible, country-threatening decision quickly and decisively." Kevin, so we've been talking about this together for the last couple of days. What do you make of this last development and of the situation in general?
I think the market is taking it in stride now in terms of the negotiations going on with places like the EU, India, Japan, Canada, Mexico. They haven't stopped. The teams are still in Washington. They understand Trump has other leverage, that he's going to stay on this mandate around trade. The market has decided we're going to end up in a reciprocal 10%. That's what it thinks right now with all those countries. The other stack that also blew up this morning was Trump about China. As you know, in Geneva a few weeks ago, they talked about reducing tariffs and allowing certain elements like magnets and rare earth and everything else to come in. They haven't complied with that. The Chinese don't play by the rules. They never have since the 2000. What they've learned is there's no consequence. Every administration for a long time has always let China do whatever they want. That's their knee-jerk reaction. That's what they expect Trump's going to do. That's not happening. Trump is continuing to squeeze Chinese heads, and he's not going to stop. And I think they're starting to get that message. And that's very important because we haven't done anything in 40 years with these guys. They cheat, they steal, they rip off IP, they don't play by the rules at all. They don't even care. They don't give a poop. That's the way I like to put it.
Language.
And I actually, I do business there, and I understand how it's worked for a long time. I applaud this administration. I applaud the China policy. Keep squeezing Chinese heads. Don't stop until these guys come to the table and play by the rules. It's that simple.
And Kennedy, talk to us about the sort of broader implications. So we know that original court decision, it only affected that portion of tariffs under the IAEP. But to Kevin's point, it was a big leverage tool, and it was a big fundamental component of the president's tariff agenda. So now that the courts have stayed that lower ruling, can we proceed with the president using it as leverage, as a good tool for all our benefit?
Well, I think Democrats watching this should hope that the process gets to see itself out, because if it's not going to be this mechanism, if it's not going to be the president using some emergency powers or using some executive order, then if it's going to go through the Senate and the Senate punted on that and they didn't take that up, then what will the mechanism be? And, you know, if any Democrat, and they're all thinking about running for president now, any Democrat looking at this will probably want this power structure to stay in place so they have as much power when they ascend to the presidency. That's why I'm always curious when people just for political reasons are trying to take apart what is in the process of being built, and therefore it's very fragile because the cement hasn't set yet. I'm very curious that they wouldn't want the same kind of power for themselves to see their agenda through. And if that's not acceptable, then we have to figure out what the rule book is. And if we're going to do that, then you have to let it play out through the entire court system.
And to Kennedy's point, you know, that's what Caroline Leavitt said. She specifically pointed out, look, this is a congressional arena to determine the politics of this, not the courts, number one. And number two, the Senate declined to prevent this from happening, thereby supporting it implicitly. So will the final say now be the Supreme Court? And how do you see this going?
It's pretty likely that it'll end up in the Supreme Court, and I think this is fascinating. The president says, you know, is this about hatred of him, of Trump himself? Is this political? And the real question is, what does this mean broadly for the negotiations that are ongoing? Kevin, I was relieved to hear you talk about how the market has kind of figured this out, giving everything a little breathing space. But globally, it's very concerning to see courts stepping in on something, particularly when at the core of this president, he uses economics for peace. He talked about that in his interview with Bret Baier, that this was part of who he is, how he governs. So this is going to the heart of the president and what he wants to accomplish, not just on the global scale, not just for Americans here. So we'll see what happens.
And Riley, let's talk about messaging. Like I've noticed that the mainstream media, the far left, likes to crow about these decisions that are at the lower level that are often and most times reversed by the Supreme Court, thereby locking into place the Trump administration's approach to begin with. So how do you see this playing out in the public eye?
Well, yeah, then I'm with President Trump, who says, where in the world did these judges come from? Can't they just let the president do his job? I would imagine when these lower level courts or these judges make these decisions, it emboldens countries like China. They see the actions that are happening here. They've been taking advantage of us for years, and they see this happening. Therefore, they want to continue taking advantage of us in the ways that they have been. It's amazing to me that a handful of judges with zero public mandate, we didn't vote for these people, can overrule the votes of 77 million Americans. And it was made very clear on November 5th that this is what Americans overwhelmingly turned out to the polls, to the ballot box, to vote for. A guy who has again, made it his mission. It was part of his policy to make a rich, prosperous, successful, stronger nation. Mr. Wonderful knows something about that. And what these judges are doing are overruling the will of the people. And then I think the question is, what's the point of an election at that point?